not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.
Also in today's community report, Clara, our resident sociologist, had some relevant things to say to the world.
So this is my kitchen. You can even see that there is a fly trap behind me. That's something I would have removed if I had really thought about this, because that is disgusting. Right now I am roasting chicken to eat later today, and I feel like I need to justify that to myself and to the world, like literally to the world, because I'm live streaming.
In other news, Ron Copperman was arrested last night after attempting to reveal secret sacred truths of the TLC to an unknown sociologist.
Hold on a second. It's the cops.
Oh no.
Ron Copperman, minister. I set the alarm off. Oh my God, dude.
What's your name, sir?
Ron Copperman. Yeah.
18A.
TLC authorities have indicated that the Copper Man is being held at an undisclosed facility until he repents of his false prophecy. Back to you, Tim.
Also, I hear Dennis Rodman has... A new episode of the Lord of Spirits podcast condemned the 1996 Chicago Bulls as Nephilim, direct descendants of Shimmy Aza and the other watchers who bound themselves with an oath. For truly they were the men of renown.
If Jesus Christ is right, oh, if we're all saved,
From my perspective, our propositions participate procedurally, running in circles. Remember, in body, we're in the age of decay. Symbolically speaking, the reapers are reaping, and damn, the records are whispering sweetly. We're all NPCs in the belly of the beast. Red pill, blue pill, red pill, Mars Hill, or DMT, or whatever you feel. God wanted number two, it's all the same damn thing. So clean your room, repent on Zoom, ontology for dummies, or bird's eye view. Cause if you really knew, could you really even say totally depraved, but totally sane? The total disposition from the bet we all made, or is it the elect, or are we just insane? From John Burbank to Jonathan Pajo, and Jordan Peterson to the Chris Peckow show. Paul Bender, Clays, and Griswold, criminal the dice he shakes. This estuary ditty is a little bit cringy. Ain't quite the U-shaped or the hero's journey. All the NPCs in the flood, treading water to watch you save the day with a bunch of chitter chatter. From the Ortho Bros to the Catholic Joes, or atheistic Joes, to Protestant folks, the Joe Schmoes and Jewish Jacobs, and everything in between. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own. Red pill, blue pill, red pill, Mars Hill, or DMT, or whatever you feel. God wanted number two, it's all the same damn thing. So clean your room, repent on to ontology for dummies, or bird's eye view. Cause if you really knew, could you really even say totally depraved, but totally sane? The total disposition from the bet we all made, or is it the elect, or are we just insane? From John Burbank to Jonathan Pajo, and Jordan Peterson to the Chris Peckow show. Paul Bender, Clays, and Griswold, criminal the dice he shakes. This estuary ditty is a little bit cringy. Ain't quite the U-shaped or the hero's journey. All the NPCs in the flood, treading water to watch you save the day with a bunch of chitter chatter. From the Ortho Bros to the Catholic Joes, or atheistic Joes, to Protestant folks, the Joe Schmoes and Jewish Jacobs, and everything in between. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own.
All right, that's AI having a whack at Chad's song that Chad put together. I agree with Grim Grizz that I think at this point the best version is Gavin's. I think Gavin. yeah, we get a lot of that. But I think Gavin did have does have the best version so far, but I guess it's a competition now. If you can do a better rendition of Chad's poem, have at it. I'll play it. Welcome. I didn't do as you notice, I'm playing with things. I'm always playing with things. And I continue to think about what I want to do in this sandbox. And I did a lot of Randall's Conversations for 7 years, and I'm going to keep doing Randall's Conversations, but part of me sees the mission as weaving together a community, and not only having sort of one-on-one time. Again, in some ways, I'm sort of following a church planter ethos here, because when you plant a church, the first thing that you do is you often just meet with people at Starbucks and just talk one-on-one. But you can't have a church is not everyone with a relationship to a pastor. A church is everyone with a relationship to each other and the pastor with a relationship to the church. And so the TLC is church-ish, church-like in some ways, because what's more important than someone's relationship with me are the relationships with one another. And so I'm playing with the Estuary protocol now and seeing what I can do with it for, let's say, bridges of meaning. So I've done question and answer for a long time, and I'm not saying I won't do it again, or I'm not saying I'm putting it on the shelf, but I want to play with this in terms of bridges of meaning. Now, I've noticed that we continue to have some video chat, some audio chat at BoM. I jump in every now and then for that, which I really enjoy. I don't jump in as much as I'd like. It just depends on what my work schedule and flow is. So what I did today was basically dropped a link in BoM to sign up to participate in this. A couple people joined, but I dropped the link pretty late and without much announcement. So I then just dropped it to the membership and then filled in the card. And I think I'm going to continue to do more of these. And I'm just because if I drop the link in Twitter, or I'm probably going to just use the membership section to drop the link for these things. And because I want people with skin in the game in the TLC. And again, that's another sort of value that I know in church. I mean, anybody can come into church. You can come in every week you want. There's no barrier to participation, but as the hierarchy ascends, what people look for from one another is skin in the game. So I think some of the people are more newish, some of the people not so much. I don't know, Matt and Gil are probably the guys that I'm least familiar with. Are you ready to go, Matt? There, he said, Matt.
Hopefully.
Oh, you're not that unfamiliar to me. You're just a little bit in the
yeah. I'm
So
at the library trying to sort out my lighting situation.
Yeah, so let's do a little bit of introduction. And so Matt, tell us a little bit about your history in the TLC, a little bit of your background. Are you an orthobro? Are you a skeptic? Are you a Catholic? Are you a Protestant? Are you a Buddhist? Are you what who the heck are you, Matt?
I am not cool enough for any of those, unfortunately. I am a evangelical lifer for good and for ill.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So did you how did you find this little corner of the internet, Matt?
I honestly don't know, because I've been lurking for far too long, frankly. So I found you on YouTube a while ago and really liked the cut of your jib, man. So
Even though I trimmed my beard.
There's repentance for all of us. You're fine. Yeah, so I just started listening to you off and on. Really appreciated I appreciated your openness to processing without any sort of fear or anxiety, ideas that are for an evangelical outside the boundaries, which is something I'm always somebody who is much closer to the fringes than the edges usually. So finding somebody who's unbothered and actually trying to make sense of guys like Jordan Peterson and whatnot, I appreciated that. And I appreciate the way in which you were very, very good at having kind of constructive, generative responses to these sorts of things. It's not just he's wrong for these reasons, but we can play with this thing he says and, from where I'm coming, build to something even more interesting and better. So that, ethos throughout your work, I've really appreciated. Yeah, I'm a seminary grad and ministry dropout. Living in
one of those.
I have my reasons.
I know a lot of those. What are some of your favorite things in the TLC?
The biggest thing that I guess I'm trying to do, I guess, is sort of like make sense of the different religions. I know it's very, very broad, but it's just that simple, like openness to like the world is God and everything we can use. So everyone has something to say that's of value and worth paying attention to and listening to. And just the simple fact that because people are coming from so many different places, the conversations are wonderfully unpredictable, frankly. I
Yeah.
don't find myself stuck in the same discussion, the same argument over and over and over again.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that for me is one of the really big deals. And all right, I'm going to bring in our second contestant. This guy's a regular, has his own channel, and he is one of the more prolific question askers. Yeah, Joseph, I'm surprised you didn't sign up. And I know, a lot of people wonder, why can't people come out of the lurk? Well, one of the things you realize is that a lot of us, depending on our jobs, we're doing this during work, and so you might be able to jump on for 5 minutes to a live stream or jump into the video chat in the Bridges of Meaning Discord, but to devote 2 hours to it is a little bit more than usual. So Sam, why don't you're somewhat known here. Why don't you give us a little bit of a picture about who you are, and then tell us some of the favorite things that you have about the TLC.
Yeah, I live in Michigan, as anyone who's encountered me on the Discord knows. I'm usually not available in the middle of the day, but I happened to be today. I was like, I'll jump on and see Paul and some of the other, Questarians, I guess. And in terms of what I enjoy, I really enjoy, but also the curiosity and the openness and sense of community I found in the TLC.
Yeah, I think a big piece of what attracts a lot of us here is what repels us from Christian YouTube. As obviously I watch a lot of Christian channels, I watch a lot of Christian content, but just the concern trolling and the idea policing it just makes me crazy. So all right, and a relative newcomer, Ian showed his face a few weeks ago. Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your favorite things about the TLC?
Well, I'm a child of the 60s, and
yeah,
that's it. That's my story. The end. So I was a rebel and a hippie, and I traveled the world, and Eastern mysticism was always where it was at. And I was kind of a drifter, never really launched into a career. I'm a happy handyman at this point, pretty much single. And then really Jordan Peterson was, just hit me square in the jaw. And I'd started to notice a couple of things. Obviously, it wasn't completely out of the blue, but that got me started on the whole discovering the West, discovering Christianity, discovering philosophy. I mean, it's like, oh my God, Jesus, okay. So these guys knew it all already, so sort of coming back to the West, realizing that that's who I am. I'm a Western man. The corner, yeah, that's how I got to you, Paul, a long time ago. And I just love the stories, the conversations, the different ways of putting the world together and taking it apart. I do have a question about where does the intellectual rabbit hole end? And for myself, it's like, where is it going to be really put into practice? I'm not unfamiliar with Christianity. I was part of a Christian cult called the Children of God in my 20s. You may be familiar, memorized a lot of Bible verses, etc. So, but that was more like community and being the rebel that I am. It's like, we've got the truth and we're out on our own and the rest of the world is going to hell. Maybe it's sort of similar today, but it's definitely a deeper take. So people like Jordan Hall, his story to me is very impactful. And many, many others, of course, Paul Kingsnorth and the regulars, John Vervaeke. I follow all of this and I'm interested in it as an intellectual, but it's like, at some point, it's like, who are you kidding? Let's get simple about it and try and live a life of faith. I should just clarify, I'm really sort of a Petersonian Christian. Like the big questions, it's an incredible story about Christ. It's the perfect story in my mind. And was it a virgin birth? Was he resurrected? Do people go to hell? These are big questions still up for me.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ian. We're going to bring in Gil. And
Hello.
Gil, you're another familiar face, but not necessarily all that regular. I mean, some people are in all the streams. Michael Satori seems to be able to find his way into almost every stream. But Gil, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Jill. I come from Switzerland. So the stream is here in the afternoon. So I had some time Friday to come to the stream. I saw the notification on the membership section, and I told myself, why should I come in? What I'm doing, I'm studying mechanical engineering, and other things I do. I've been with Bern to Georgia, and also I visited Bern as he was in Florence just recently. I just came back home yesterday, actually, and it was quite a little adventure. So we had
wonderful. That's some real TLC cred to visit Bern in Georgia and Florence. So welcome, Joe.
Nice
and one guy really doesn't need a lot of introduction. He is one of those regulars and does his own stuff. And I haven't watched any of your latest series yet, but I know where to find it. So Neil, what do you want to say about yourself?
What brings me in? You asked the question, what do I value about TLC? And it's always a hard question to answer, so I can answer. I answered culture and pastoring. And I think the fact that you're a pastor and not a theologian is a key part of it. Bone deep caring of people. But I also really liked what Ian said about, like what came to my mind as Ian was talking is we're all seekers. And you said that from before, Paul, that I think one of the things that binds us here is we all seem to be seekers, but we still haven't found what we're looking for in some way, shape, or form. And yet we sort of have faith that it will find us. That it's sort of the grace, the grace side of faith that I seems to be lacking from Peterson sometimes. But so I love all that. I love the people here. I love the bottom-up discovery, the search for truth, not being afraid of truth in any shape that it comes in, because we're able to trust in the Almighty, you could say. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think that it's sort of a fearlessness is kind of what attracts a lot of us, is that we have a sense that a lot of the Christian YouTube concern trolling and boundary policing is sort of fear motivated. And while it's important to be afraid of things, I mean, fear has its place. We've always got to sort of, Jesus tells us to, there, on one hand, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. On the other hand, do not be afraid. So, all right. I don't know, somebody's got a mic that's a little noisy. We're gonna
either Ian or Gil.
Yeah,
one or the other.
Oh,
It is Ian.
It's me. What's going on?
Your mic's a little noisy, so you might want to mute occasionally.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna. Yeah, there it is. There's that beautiful silence. We're gonna start. I assume all of you are familiar with the Estuary protocol. Just a brief introduction. The Estuary protocol is a series of rounds. We just accomplished the first one, which are introductions. The second round are I usually I bring the Estuary down into introductions, pitch, point, and play. All right, so that's what it's going to be. It's going to be introductions, pitch, point, and play. In this next round, I want you to pitch an idea to the group about where to start the conversation. It can be an intellectual idea that you've been chewing on. It can be a contextual idea, something in your environment, maybe something political or something in your home or something in your city or something in your church or something in your family. It can be something personal, which is something in your life that, maybe you've gotten married or you had a kid or there's a problem you're working on and it's something appropriate to share with a larger group of people to sort of get their input from. Or it can be something estuarial, something that has to do with the process of this group or the discussion or estuary or even I'll expand it to the TLC. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to go around and everybody gets an opportunity to pitch something. You can pass if you want to. Usually with these things, people are kind of coming in knowing what they're doing. So pitch something to the group. And then the next round is you have to listen carefully to the pitches. That's why I usually write them down. Is to point to something that someone else said that you said, that grabbed my interest. That grabbed my salience landscape. And I want to pick up on that. Or sometimes people take one or two or three pitches and they start to weave them together and they say, well, that caught my ear and I connect it with that. And for me, that means this. And then I sort of total up all of the points and say, okay, let's start playing here. Now, in the process of the conversation, we can, and often do, start to draw on some of the other pitches and bring them together into one thing. And then we're just in playtime then, and off we go, and we're going to have a conversation. And we'll have a conversation probably until maybe 11:45, and then maybe I'll drop the link and let some of the other people in the hive mind play. And that's what we're going to do. And I'll assume there's no questions about this. So I'm just going to go around in the circle that we have here. So Matt, you get the first chance to pitch. What's on your mind?
I kind of want to play with your metagelicalism stuff a little bit. For context, that was me that was spamming your members video yesterday as soon as you posted like the 6 or 7 different messages. And I think one of the things that I said is the assumption that evangelicalism is dying. And I pushed the question like, yes, it's dying, but is it the sort of death that's going to create a bunch of fruit? And I kind of think that metagelicalism is evangelicalism infecting all of our all of our other brothers and sisters in Christendom. And I think one of the things that frustrates me, I'm sorry, I got like 6 different thoughts, so I'm probably just going to trajectory off somewhere else. But one of the things that I find like a little bit frustrating about some approaches to evangelicalism, and I think also more broadly to like modernity, is the idea that we can just pretend like they didn't happen once they die. There's something, if we just wait it out, we can just get back to business as usual. There's no sense that we need to work through whatever this was and figure out some way to metabolize the good in there while vomiting out what was not so good. And I think this posture of just waiting for things to die without dealing with them or processing them is going to, come back to bite us in the end. We can either be something helpful or we can be an infection.
All right.
Yeah, here we go. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Sam, what do you have to pitch? You always have ideas.
Yeah, so contextually, it's been quite cold here this week. I don't think it's got above 25 degrees, which is fine by me, but I mean, it's something that, I mean, you meet a person if you're in the Midwest or the Great Lakes region, and they always, I feel like they're talking about. But in terms of TLC things, I've been thinking about the relationship between Christianity and politics and what the role of a Christian should be. There was the Jonathan Rauch and Jonah Goldberg conversation that got some play on the channel this week, which had some problems with it, but it was worth listening to. But the bigger one was actually Michael Horton on Know What You Believe, a relatively new podcast. He had a pretty good discussion about post-liberalism and some pretty interesting people there. So that, and I don't know, I guess just you think about it, and I guess I have sort of maybe two tensions in my head. I mean, one is, I mean, if you think of like the creed and the last statement in it, last positive statement, there's the affirmation at the end, is I believe in the life everlasting. And on some level, I do kind of sense that when we talk about things like post-liberalism, we're maybe playing into the opponent's hand a little bit, in that, I mean, if you really believe the Bible and you really believe the Christian message, I mean, there's a way in which, even though it's one of the more mysterious statements, it's kind of the most important part of the creed too. I mean, because, I mean, think of our life here. We have, I don't know, maybe 70 to 90 years if we're lucky, but I mean, we're really in a position where, I mean, we're ultimately going to be somewhere else. But I guess the other tension, though, with that, though, is that you think of Christ and his ministry, and I mean, Christ was not the Buddha. He did not look for enlightenment by casting off desires. That wasn't his mission in the world. And he was involved with the political system, I mean, as were the prophets and, I mean, the apostles after that. So I guess I just had that tension in my mind when I was trying to think of what to talk about today. And maybe to put something at question, it's maybe slightly off field, but I guess is politics, is it something that's increased in our salience hierarchy? And is it kind of, I don't know, is it in the process of replacing, I mean, maybe the old time religion as the more implicit religion in our society?
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Ian, what's on your mind? Do you have anything to pitch to us this morning, Ian? Something you'd like to colonize us with? You're going to have to unmute.
So, yeah, I'm already going to point a little bit to what Matt said. I think this whole metagelical word that you coined is very apropos, and it's like, well, okay, let's see where are we going in the future. I contextualize it in terms of cultural collapse, or at least, some sort of chaos, or the meaning crisis, and then cultural rebirth of some kind. Things go in cycles. So all of that is very interesting to me. Also, and how can I participate? I mean, I am signed up to train in the Estuary, so that's one place. And then I thought this morning, tell me if I'm wrong, but was it Thomas Aquinas who at a certain point just shut up? He stopped teaching, and he stopped writing, and he stopped trying to somehow convey to people what the truth was. And so where do the words end? And what is all of this intellectual pontificating all about. I mean, atheists have made fun of Christians sitting around trying to determine how many angels fit on the head of a pin. But I know community and culture are going to would play a big role in that conversation.
All right. Thank you very much. Jill, what's on your mind? What do you have to pitch?
Well, I have quite a pitch. So the last thing we discussed, I and Bern, as we were leaving the Uffizi Gallery, was what is actually reality, and we had a bit of a discussion about that in a cafe, and it's we didn't came to any conclusion, but he told me that something like he's on some level he's happy about the life he has done, and I do think that is quite real, but that warrants a discussion about what is a good life, let's say. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, the life." What does life mean, actually? It's just making mistakes? Is it the strange path we live in our lives and so on? I mean, yeah, that's my pitch.
All right. Thank you, Jill. Neil, you're gonna have to mute again, Ian. That when your mic is open, when you're talking, it's fine, but the mic on your computer is a seeking mic, and so it just keeps turning up the gain when you're silent. So just on and off. It's a real pain, but yeah. Neil, what's your pitch?
Are we past peak entertainment?
Ooh.
There's a lot packed into that. So how do you define entertainment? I define it as unidirectional relationality, one-way direction. Video game sales are down. That's something I follow. And I was talking to Chad about this morning, and he had a phrase that I loved. But I told him I'd give him credit for it. And his phrase was, "Are we breaking out of static mythologies?" Because Chad talked to a producer of Radiolab at a recent Rando interview, and the way this producer described what they do is the creation of mythologies. So you have a binding of science, but then you have a mythological story layer above that packages it. And so that's what we've been fed, for 100 years. We've been fed static mythologies, stories that are one directional. And now is it a dynamic mythology that we are building, whether it's within TLC or, even within a church? A good church community has its own mythologies of how that church started, the key moments, the key decisions. Yeah. The Kairos things that bind people together. That's what I got. So, and I guess any of that, but the main question is peak entertainment. Are we past that? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there are the pitches. I'm not going to summarize them because whenever I summarize them, I'm not going to pitch anything. Y'all have pitched stuff, and some of me and your stuff you pitched anyway. So, Matt, what would you like to point to? Something else that someone else said that you heard and thought, I want to talk about that.
I want to point at something Ian said, but also want to comment on Neil for a second. Firstly, I hope we're not past peak entertainment just because I'm a professional entertainer right now. So hopefully we're still building and I can have a career. But the big thing that Ian said that
passive entertainment.
Well, to be fair, what I do is not, it's in person and it's not unidirectional, or at least I'm trying to make it that way. So anyway, we can talk about that if you're interested. But the big thing that Ian said that I think is one worth talking about, but I don't understand how we're going to talk about it. It's the question of where do the words end? How do we talk about the things that are below the level of articulation? It's one of the things that are very, if you have something say a very profound mystical experience or whatnot, it's something that it's powerful, it's emotive, but even to try and describe it, it's a very delicate thing. And in some sense, I think we can, all religion is in some sense trying to articulate what is to some degree inarticulable as a way of getting us towards that higher I don't know, sub-articulate point, if that makes any sense. So no, I'm very much interested in those things that you can't quite describe, whether it's something you communicate visually, something you communicate musically, and the role of religious and God talk in relation to that. So thumbs up, Ian. Let's do it.
Great, Matt. Sam, what would you like to point to?
I was thinking about just making notes here about Gil's question of what is the good life and what does it mean to, I guess, have the life more abundantly. And I was, just thinking about some of the things that I'd been listening to earlier today about community and like the idea of loneliness and how, I guess, what the faith has to say about how we're supposed to relate to other people. Hopefully that wasn't too jumbled.
No. All right. Ian, what would you like to point to? Yeah, it's always a pain to unmute that darn thing.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Metagelicalism, I think. Of course, everything is interesting. I mean, we could go off what is reality and what is a good life. That's always a good one. That's all I'll say.
All right. Jill, I want to get your name right because I'm going to be saying it a lot. It's more of a j. It's not a hard g, and it's not really a hard j. What is it in terms of those three sounds?
To be quite honest, I have never discussed it actually with my parents how you actually pronounce it. So it's I pronounce it Jill, and I guess that's it.
All right, Jill. There it is.
So,
what would you like to point to?
Yeah, I was thinking about I guess Meta-evangelicalism. I was thinking about that, and this whole thing about have we talked enough about stuff, and I feel like I'm going into the Orthodox direction. I kind of feel like I need to talk less and listen more, but at the same time, like I'm here, so it's a performative contradiction, and therefore I feel like I should criticize these things as I go out, perhaps, or perhaps it just I don't know, if I organize a party, I just speak about, I guess, stuff that doesn't make that whole lot of sense, but perhaps makes a good story. So it's that worries me. But to be honest, all the questions we have brought they're probably going to come up in one way or the other in the other conversation. So for me, it's Meta-evangelicalism, and
All right. Good. Neil, what do you want to point to?
Ian's. When he said, "Where do the words end?" That struck me. Yeah. So what are the bells and smells? So after the words, you got the bells and the smells. What are the new bells and smells that we're cooking up?
All right. I'm sort of on where do the words end too. I was thinking this morning about my conversation with Nathan Jacobs, and I was thinking about how. So Nathan Jacobs was talking about Reformed scholasticism, and I was thinking about the fact that he was talking about Calvin College, Calvin Seminary, because that's his alma mater, and he was talking sort of about the thinning of evangelicalism. And in the conversation, it's the whole one. It'll probably come out Monday or Tuesday. I was thinking about Mark Knoll's thesis of as America grew out west, it had to leave its institutions behind, and so it left its books behind and its education behind, and so everything sort of went into a biblicism because the Bible is all they had. and you had this whole mixture of people, and so then they had to form churches of Catholics and Orthodox and Baptists and Methodists and Presbyterians and Quakers, and of course the Mormons got going. So you'd have to form a church, and so that's what this whole Bible believing thing happened, where all we can have is the Bible as sort of what holds us together, and that of course shaped things. And but what they left was Thomas Aquinas and then Reformed scholasticism that dealt with all of the nuance and talk. Scholasticism is all about all the talking. And I thought about the fact that, someone here mentioned I'm not a theologian, I'm a pastor. And what that means is, whereas pastors deal with talking, our talking is usually at a different register than, let's say, theologians and scholastics. And I was thinking about how a lot of that nuance was built into me by action more than words. And so that got me thinking about very much this dynamic that Ian has. Where do the words end? Because Peterson, when he begins his Genesis lecture, his first lecture is all about the relationship between drama and language. And Michael Sartori reintroduced recently C.S. Lewis's great essay on transpositions, which makes the point that so many ideas, when it comes to bodily application, only have a limitation of range. It's sort of like exaptation. But these things go both ways. So on one hand, our tongue is extremely adaptive because we need it to manipulate food in our mouths so that we can chew properly and get things down. But that adaptive capacity of the tongue now is deployed in this way so that I can, as air leaves my lungs, I don't even think about it. I mean, I figured all this stuff out before I could even narrate into this sort of long story that I see myself as being. So I can use my tongue and my lips and my teeth to say Gil or Jill or Jill. And so there's all this exaptation going back and forth and all this transposition going back and forth. And I think that sort of leads us to the point of we sort of get full up on words, and then it's like, well, just shut up and do something. But then once we start doing things, it's like, what the heck am I doing? I need to figure this out. And the only way I can sort of expand the range of my doing is to bring it then into the word world. And suddenly you've got people doing seemingly exactly the same thing, but they're meaning totally different things because of the world. And so there's just constant back and forth between these two worlds. And so, yeah, when do the worlds end? And I also really, I think Matt is very right about the fact that one of the things we say is that evangelicalism is dying, and in a sense it is. But in other ways, it's already deeply colonized the Roman Catholics, and we're watching it colonize the Orthodox. We are watching it colonize the Orthodox big time. And the funny thing about a lot of welcome colonization is people don't even know they're doing it until years later. Some thinky talky academic will say, well, blah, 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 blah. So, all right, we've had the intro, we've had the pitch, we've had the pointing, and I think Jill is right that, yeah, these are all going to come up. So let's play.
I'll play on what you just said a second there, Paul. When in the middle of my seminary studies, when I started to get really, for the first time, tired of all the talk, I had this sort of like shift into ethics, moral theology, which is a little bit more of which also corresponded with trying to deal with a number of like pastoral failures in my life. But the first, I guess, like exposure I had to like the place of where the words end is this thinking very deeply about why we act, how we act, and learning to sort of establish this cycle of reflective action, action based on a reflection, and this is the first time I'm sort of like introduced to a deeper, more psychologically rich view of what we're doing, how we're acting, starting to become conversant with, you know, subconscious psychological motivations and whatnot. Yeah.
The way I understand words is because I've sort of explored and joined different crazy groups and stuff, I feel like my body and my feelings had spiritual experiences, were in touch with reality. Well, I mean, I say quotes. I shouldn't really, because it is the real reality, as opposed to, you know, trying to figure out in an intellectual sense what's real. But that my mind had to catch up. So it was really because I was like, no, I mean, come on, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I was a hippie, sure, but I was also trained in reductionist thinking, and my brain just has those pathways where it wants to understand in a sort of predictable, rational way. I'm not saying that we're supposed to get rid of that, but, you know, in McGilchrist's terms, we shouldn't have it lead the way. So my mind had to catch up, and the corner was really so helpful with that. McGilchrist was so helpful with that. It's like, oh, now my mind can trust because it's got something to hang its hat on.
Yeah, I love how you said that, Ian, because it's so my experience too. You know, it's interesting watching, you know, to get back to Jill's pitch, you know, the ongoing war between the idealists and the materialists, let's say. You know, it's in some ways the war between Plato and Aristotle. It's this reality that we're constantly trying. We have to live in both of these worlds, and in order to be a whole person and not at war with yourself, you've always got to be working that layer in the middle. And you can, if you only have yourself to talk to about these things, it's so much better to have each other.
Yeah, I also felt the same way when I was with BoM, because there was like some, let's say, cultural synchronicity. So if he talked about what he means by the religion of the self, like I understood what his meaning behind his words were, and we don't have to get acclimated to the same things. But at the same time, I also recognize, like, I grew up with the internet pretty much, and how many times I've watched a Jordan Peterson lecture, and I was thinking, yeah, I just understand something really important about the world. So I go to talk to the hairdresser about it, and she doesn't understand anything, and I'm sitting there. I tried to explain it. I feel also really stupid because when he said it, he sounded smart. I wanted to sound smart, and what does it happen? I sound like a dumbass, and I just yeah. And so I had to do this whole cycle a whole lot of times, and I thought myself, yeah, I don't know about this whole symbolism stuff. It's just yeah, I guess it does drain some insecurities I have for myself, but for living daily life, to talking to the hairdresser, you probably should, I don't know, have just a pulse about who is still with whom and so on. So yeah, but
I watched it's a video again. There's way more than I ever get a chance to put on Homeroom, but I watched Jonathan. Oh shoot, what's his last name? Rowson. He's in the UK. he did a talk on the three horizons, very meaning crisis talk. I wonder if that talk was at an event. It was at an event in Montreal. I suspect John Vervaeke was there too. But he talked about the three horizons, which I hadn't really thought about that whole thing before, but it's been around a while. The first horizon is sort of the world of gossip. The second horizon is sort of the world that a investment, let's say an investment manager is in. It's sort of like the second order horizon. Gossip is like everything now. And, YouTube is just full of gossip. I mean, it's the Los Angeles fires. It's it's all this stuff down here. But the investment banker is sort of the second horizon. And of course, the third horizon is sort of eternity. And we've got those three horizons. And what was really helpful to me was in thinking about the future is always sort of in those three. You can think of the future in those three ways. And the hairdresser, I should just tell you, Jill, that if you say hairdresser among a group of men in the United States, you might want to say the barber, because it's going to go
the barber.
different. I know.
I'm a foreigner. Can't you understand this?
I understand completely. I just want to make sure you know that until the hive mind takes after you. But it's, and part of what launched my own meetup here at Living Stones and has launched the TLC is so many of us wanted to talk to our wives about this stuff, and our wives are like, go away. I don't want to talk to you about this. That's, and that gets into the question of, because another ongoing conversation here is, so much talking. When are you going to shut up and do something? And it's like, yeah, but I got to talk to stay sane. And I have to have someone listen to me. And I need to, this whole sanity thing, we never know if we're sane until we can connect with another human being. Sanity is always located in community. It's not between your ears.
Yeah, I can say, I don't think I mentioned that I'm also part of a community now, spiritual community with its own incarnation. So we can get into that. But I try to talk to them about these things, and it's the same response, which brings up a lot of questions. It's like, what, are we starting our own cult here? What are we doing? If you can't talk to the rest of humanity.
Well, I experienced that with, in a sense, my divorce with my church, because, now, of course, the YouTube channel's brought in a few people who watch the channel and are at Living Stones. But the majority of people at Living Stones, I'm sure everyone at one point or another, or most of the people at one point or another, were like, I got to see what my pastor's doing on YouTube. And they listened for 3 minutes and turned it off.
It's a good thing we have Estuary. And I know, most of you, all of you guys are probably invested in your communities and putting love into practice, so don't want to discount that.
No. Sam, you unmuted a few minutes ago. Where were you going?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So, I'm just thinking about Metagelical a little bit to maybe circle back a little bit. And it seems to be the catch phrase or word of the day. And I guess part of what Metagelical seems to be is it seems to be a death of evangelicalism, in a sense that I think that, I hear you often refer to the Coldplay concert followed by the TED Talk, and that's kind of shorthand in the corner about our discontents with sort of seeker-friendly Christianity. And I say that as someone who's probably more sympathetic to that type of Christianity than most in the corner. And but I guess another part of it, though, is I think and a discussion and a dialogue, maybe I guess you could say a kind of ecumenicism between evangelicalism and, well, Catholicism for sure, but also Orthodoxy and even Judaism, and people who are curious but not necessarily part of a organized religion either.
Yeah, I was thinking about the whole metagelical question, and I was thinking like, well, let's say we don't have any borders, like how it's actually how it's coming to be due to the internet. Let's say, but that somehow one of the church sects goes in the direction that they just go swearing against the Holy Spirit all the time. What do we do in that case? Because swearing against the Holy Spirit is the mortal sin we cannot recover from, and your soul is destroyed pretty much. There's the whole question, what does the Holy Spirit mean? The conclusion I came to is somewhat like the action of love in between people. So if we don't live through love in between people, we are lukewarm, and we will be like some kind of, I don't know exactly, but like the French nobles before the French Revolution, and that means we need to stay really attentive to be useful actually to people, and not just to talk like this whole Tower of Babel internet thing. And that is the conclusion I came to. And I can like talk a bit about it a bit, but if I make a brand about it, then I'm also part of the BoM. So that is, I think it's the whole problem about Christianity nowadays, just too lukewarm. It's just, yeah, I go to church to get my fix of Jesus, and then I go home, I play video games, I rant a bit about the internet, about feminists and so on, and good. But no, that's really is.
Jill just named the TLC life for many people.
Yeah, I was kind of part of these people, but you pass a bit 2 years of it, and you realize it's not the feminist next door the problem. It's your incapacity to love. It's pretty much that, and yeah, I have to do some penance about that. But yeah.
The feminist next door. I love it.
Yeah, you should have seen the pathetic 6 years ago, just trying to explain hierarchy of competence to a feminist who was blaming, I don't know, some feminist point, which is, it has its point, and just trying to explain that, yeah, the solution is a hierarchy of competence, and she was like, huh? What do you mean? And I felt really dumb in that moment, but yeah. It's,
if you say Jordan Peterson 3 times in a mirror, does a plumber show up?
Maybe it gets turned back into a lobster. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm giving space for you guys. You guys are pretty
okay, here we go. Panel. First of all, how's the sound now? Same? Stop
talking. Better.
Okay.
A little bit better.
I put these earbuds in. So we're all interested. There's a general interest about where we're headed in the culture, and the TLC is, I think, close to the sharp end of what's going on. And I heard Sam when he said, well, how do we start paring this down? How do we start, naming things that aren't the case. But I want to put my opinion on the table and just say we're not at that place yet. It feels like something like the Estuary is actually a good, a well-adapted tool to get everybody more or less in the same conversation. You know, not everybody, but a big portion of people who are wildly divergent in their ancestry, in their faiths, in their lives because of the way things are, you know. There's no community out there anymore. Very little. At least for someone like me, I've had to join specific communities in order to experience that. Somebody said something really. Yesterday, I was hearing somebody. Richard IV, this English YouTuber, and he was saying, you know, we probably can't save the culture. It's going to have to run its course, and then at the crisis point, crisis in the sense of when the iron is hot, when it's time, there'll be some sort of moment of what? I'm not coming up with the word, but
Kairos moment.
Kairos. Okay, so and we're not there yet. So I sort of feel like, well, is it right to start bickering? Not bickering, I'm sorry, but is it right to start? I mean, I know we do on the corner, and that's part of it, but we really should have maybe a more inclusive sense of, hey, it's time to come back towards the one, the truth, God, and start talking to your fellow seekers. And that's about as far as we can go so far, I think. Christianity is going to be the outcome, I think, as long as the West has some sort of continuity. Anyway.
I was listening to the same video. I mean, maybe YouTube has decided that what Sam watches, I need to watch. So I was listening to the Michael Horton, James Wood, Van Drunen video on. It's basically on liberalism and post-liberalism, and and this sort of connects up with what Matt said about evangelicalism. I mean, part of the reason I'm playing with the word meta is meta means through. It also means after. It's part of the reason meta is such a possible word, or such a popular word right now, even though Zuckerberg. I mean, if you thought I did something ugly, Zuckerberg renaming Facebook to Meta, that was really that really bothered me in terms of the language commons. But
what about the alphabet, sir?
That's right. Them too. They're the worst criminals. But I really resonate with what you say, Ian, in that on one hand, I think we're at a moment when I'm watching now, everybody's. So I live in Sacramento. Karen Bass was in the state house for a long time here. African-American woman. I know people in sort of the African-American state political scene here in Sacramento. And so then I see this video that she's in Ghana while, Los Angeles is burning and she's the mayor. And I'm just thinking, because I know people in politics in Los Angeles and in Sacramento. And I'm just thinking a lot of Ghana. It's interesting because Ghana has been pursuing a relationship with the state of California. And some people from my church have been flying to Ghana, and they're talking with, because they're and it's really a wonderful thing that they're trying to do in terms of African Americans getting in touch with, some people in Ghana and trying to create those relationships to help the nation of Ghana. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. But the thing is, if you're mayor of Los Angeles and that fire breaks out, it's like, I need to be on that plane today, and I need to be seen here. And of course, and the political food fight is going to happen. But we're at a place in our culture where we have the sense that things need to shift, that unproductive conversation is unproductive, and we know we need to finally work together. And one of the things that struck me listening to Horton and James Wood and some of these guys these are deeply reformed Calvinists. So on one hand, they're very much my cousins, those Presbyterians over there, and I read some of what they write and I appreciate some of what they do. But at the same time, I don't think they necessarily have their due, because it is, I'm going to say something that's probably going to strike some people. The American system is built on Calvinism. The Pilgrims and Puritans were Calvinists. Now, I want to give Unitarian Sam his due too, because the Unitarians have a piece of that too, in terms of how do we manage this pluralism? How do we process this? And so, even that, who mentioned you did, Sam, the Roush and Goldberg conversation, which I too thought was generally excellent. And in fact, I read the first chapter of his book, the Kindle sample, and I might this week read some of that introduction from Roush, because Tim Keller gets a name in the introduction, and he was quite moved by the fact that Keller in New York City managed to be, on one hand, be a conservative confessional Calvinist and draw credibility with the wide variety of people in New York City, including this gay left-wing journalist who now is out there saying things like, we need Christians to be better Christians. But there's a lot to talk about in terms of his book. But I think we're at that point now where we're not going to give up on pluralism. But some in the TLC were saying things like, you need a certain confidence that religion provides in order to afford the generosity of pluralism. And we have to learn that dance together. And, in terms of liberalism, I think liberalism achieved that quite well for a long time. But some of my anxiety about the epistemic revolt and the death of facts is that liberalism is deeply tied to that epistemology. And what I'm nervous about is that if we lose that epistemology, do we also lose our capacity to have both a cohesive self-identity and a generous pluralism?
Well, my suspicion is always kind of inside of Christianity, that, let's say, traditional Christianity in form of Orthodoxy and Catholicism. It's like kind of, there's always kind of a bit of conflict in between the sides. So Peter says this, Paul says that, and then they have a bit of bickering and so on. And on some level, it's kind of, if you want to be like some kind of leader, you need to be a monk and so on, or you can be just a normal kind of, a pastor, a presbyter of some kind, and that's how you manage some form of pluralism, and still that the coming out of the insights of a single person has still some place inside of the culture. But and I think in traditional Christianity, there used to be this kind of thing, but nowadays I don't know exactly if it's still working. My suspicion is sometimes not, to be quite honest, but there always kind of is some conflict. And to be honest, I think there is something really generative about that if we worship too much the world outside of Christianity, then we're just going to be invaded by liberalism and this strange thing outside, like film culture and I don't know, internet nerds that are talking always about the I don't know, specific kind of video game they like. So we need to look like a bit more inside of the church about what's going on. But at the same time, that means we need to be more Christian than we already are. And I try to do that, run that experiment, and it's fruitful, but it's really stressful, to be quite honest. So like it's like trying to get to know Jesus more closer. Like I don't know, sometimes you try to turn. I don't know. I feel like many Christians are trying to make Christianity a pro-fertility religion, but then Jesus says, "Woe to the women that are pregnant at the end times," and it's kind of, well, we are kind of some sort of end time, and it's clear that perhaps sometimes you should treat all other things as more important. So I don't know exactly where I'm ending up with it, but so always really strange. It's yeah, and this whole thing.
What does trying to follow Christ or trying to be a Christian more, what does that look like to you practically, Joe?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of, there are always images that kind of flip away, that we forget that Jesus said. So like as an example, there was with this woman once that inside of the gospel that talked about how blessed are the tits that gave you that gave Jesus milk and so on. And he said, no, blessed are those who follow the law. And it's kind of my suspicion, like I'm inside of Orthodoxy, so there are many people that are talking, yeah, Orthodoxy has the true beliefs about stuff, and it's kind of, yeah, they do, I guess. Well, I believe it, actually. But still, I'm more reassured when I see like a guy that still does his prayers when he really doesn't want to. And believe me, there's some times where I really don't want to do my prayers, my evening prayers. It just, I want to go sleeping. I'm drunk. I don't feel so well, whatever. And then you still, in theory, should do your prayers, or you shouldn't get drunk. But I mean, I have a social life to maintain. So, how do I keep this thing in balance? I don't know exactly, but it's I don't know. It's sometimes like I try to do speculation about stuff. So for me, as an example, the TV series Chernobyl is, I have this paranoid conspiracy that it's not about radiation and so on, but it's about this exiting of the structure of Christianity on from our world, because it has this really powerful idea that can, it's really much energy, and then somehow it came loose, and then for everything around it started dying on some level. So I don't think it's a really my conspiracy theory holds much water, to be honest, with other people, but I do believe it, and it's my strange fear about it, and I need to fight for this idea, because otherwise I'm just being lukewarm. I'm just not saying my ideas when I think they should be said. It's kind of
So, a big epiphany occurred for me when I realized that technology acts as a difference magnifier. So you remember how Peterson, this was a while ago, but Peterson was talking about how gender differences were the greatest in the most egalitarian countries, that the more free both genders were to pursue what was in their heart, so to speak, the bigger those differences became. And what I realized is that technology gives us the capacity to focus more on what we want to do and less on what we have to do. And you could say that the need to focus on what we have to do was the binding element of cultures throughout all of history. Like, this is essential for us to live, to survive, to, and so what's happening in culture now, as I see it, is the proliferation of what I'll call the false idol problem. In that, if your heart loves anything, backgammon, more than anything else in the world, I just threw out a completely random thing. For most young men, it's video games or pornography and other things. But yeah, exactly. But so with technology, it's like technology right now is just a virtual Aladdin's lamp that gives you whatever you want, whenever you want it, on infinite wishes. But in science fiction, there's the idea of a universal constructor. And so if you can imagine that we each had a universal constructor or a replicator that could replicate whatever we wanted physically in physical reality. So the realization for me was that if we get to that point, the only thing preventing me from living in my Star Trek holodeck all day, every day, is if I actually wanted to help other people. Meaning that if I could construct my perfect family, friends, society, church, etc., in the holodeck, where it's all based on what I think is best, then I'm never threatened because it's what I think is best. And that's actually hell. That's hell. That voluntary acceptance of vulnerability is coming in contact with the thing that's not me. And reaching that realization left brain style, like that was just, when you have a realization left brain, like it doesn't sink into your soul. It takes a long time to sink into your soul. But the other thing that slowly made its way into my soul was that, like what brings me joy is not static. Like I am not, so what I mean by that is like service used to never bring me joy in any capacity. But if I know that service or love, you could say, of others is actually the right thing to do, I can actually make the sacrifices now in the, not expectation, but I would say in the hope that those things may bring me joy, just the pure joy of serving without expectation. Like the pure, just doing the joy of doing the right thing for the right reason and letting the chips fall where they may. And that has slowly but gradually happened to me. And then what emerges from that is like just even a greater joy, because it's like, yeah, that's where I see the future hopefully going. Is that like the only thing at the end of the hedonic treadmill is you. And there's even this trope within Christianity. It's like, have you gotten to the end of yourself? And but that's the inevitable result. So like what we're doing here, like Ian was saying, the tip of the spear, I see that. I don't think we yet realize the implications of like what that means, but like I don't see how it plays out any other way than what I just described. Like the only thing that's inexhaustible is other people. Like that's it. And PVK has said this multiple times over the years, but it hasn't. It's left brain struck me, but it hasn't, it's taken time.
Yeah, I think of my reading group with Introduction to Christianity, and which is it was adopted from college lectures, but if you really read it closely, a big part of the point of it is this kind of joke is just say the creed. Right, because because Ratzinger is very big on the limits of knowing, and I think about this, and I say that like I'm preaching, but I'm as bad about this as anyone, because sometimes like I wake up on Monday and I think, I should wake up early and I should say prayers before I go to work, or I'm in my car and maybe I should, listen to scripture or something, but then there's a new podcast from Bill Simmons, and I kind of am trying to catch up on what happened with the football games the day before, or maybe what Trump said at his most recent press conference about Greenland or Canada. And I get stuck in yeah, I mean, very much part one horizon, right? And not, and maybe occasionally the part two horizon, but I don't know how much I'm at the part three horizon, despite, I don't know, I guess being someone who's preaching on YouTube, that people should try to have that focus.
Yeah.
I
What
love what you said. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was kind of thinking about the credo. Yeah, the funny thing is, like, my spiritual father was actually someone that studied under Ratzinger. That is, so they understand each other, like, on the basic level of just do the prayers, just do their hard work, and so which is kind of I don't know. At the beginning I associated this idea of more with Protestantism, but now that I'm side of Orthodoxy, I recognize it's kind of it's an evergreen reality, to be honest. And just do the work, and you'll find out later that it was worth it. Yeah,
it's funny. It's funny what the work is. So I'm preaching this week, and my sermon's not. I'll have to make a rough draft. But anybody who watches my rough draft, the rough draft is a rough draft. They do change by Sunday. So I'm preaching this week on John the Baptist, and I'm in Luke, and I'm not doing the Jordan Peterson montage gospel thing. I stick with an author. And I use the narrative lectionary, not the Revised Common Lectionary.
That's the Catholic reading on Sunday, PVK, by the way. It's Luke,
it really?
And it's John the Baptist.
Well, sometimes, this time of year especially, they tend to come together. Why I like the narrative lectionary, which comes out of Luther seminaries, the Revised Common Lectionary usually jumps between the Gospels, and I like just in one year, we're in Luke this year, and I like my people just to hear Luke. But it's so interesting because Luke, and I just pointed this out on Twitter, Luke 3:18, at the end of this, it says, and John proclaimed the good news. It's basically what it says. And it's like, okay, well, what did John say? And John said his general message was those who have two cloaks, give one to the poor. And then it was the tax collectors. And to the tax collectors, he says, don't take any more taxes. They're doing tax farming, basically. So it's really easy for the tax man to rip off the people. And they're doing it, of course, for the non-indigenous people that don't know where the money is. So don't take more than is required. And to the soldier, don't do extortion, using your force to extort people. And it was like, boy, that's a really low bar. I mean, you might expect a real prophet out there to say, overthrow the Roman tyranny and the Roman oppressor, and raid Herod's palace and clean out all his stuff. I mean, that's what a real revolutionary says. I mean, John the Baptist, for all of the camel skin and, munching on locusts in the desert, he's basically giving a fairly, and interpreters have noticed this throughout the years, he's basically giving a fairly shopkeeper, bourgeois message.
Except for the fire and clearing. The good news is you're going to be baptized with fire, and your threshing floor, you're going to be cleared off the threshing floor.
Well, that's exactly it. So you have this discord sort of between the two messages. And so then when you get to sort of Neil's point of what is doing the work for Neil's point, doing the work is relational with your neighbor. And that is material, of course, in terms of what we do with the material stuff we have, the cloaks and the money, but it's also just attention. And, Jill's point to sort of love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the work you're doing in prayer. But then there's the work we do towards our neighbors, and the work we do towards our neighbors is not just material, but so often, especially in our deeply affluent society, it's paying attention to someone and listening to someone. And I think that's part of why the Randall's conversations had so much power for people, is that someone was actually listening to someone. And it's so funny because in a marriage, a lot of what you do is you listen to your spouse and you pay attention and you care. And as a pastor, I mean, so often we think the job of the pastor is to give good sermons. It is. And I sound terribly un-Protestant about that. But the job of a pastor is usually just to listen to your people. And the truth is, people can be really boring. They can be really repetitive. And you can get really frustrated because when a person is stuck, they're trying to get rid of their stuckness by just they're on this hamster wheel, and you just want to smack them and just say, stop it. It's just, I know, but it's like, maybe it's going to take 10,000 hours of talking for this person to get to the point of saying, maybe my annoying coworker isn't the problem. Maybe part of that problem's in me, and maybe I need to do the terrifying thing of holding up a mirror and seeing something about myself.
Yeah. I think ministers are oftentimes much more in touch with the limitations of what they can do than almost anyone else. But yeah, you talk about the John the Baptist and his ministry and the sort of secular component of that. But I shouldn't say secular, the materialistic component of that. But I mean, his first message though was repent, though, right? And I mean, that's where everyone could start, maybe every morning, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and the question is, how? Okay, repent. And this is the end of words. Ian's point. Okay, pastor, why are you saying I should feel bad? I already feel bad, pastor, but feeling bad, I do that all the time. It doesn't help me. What do I need to do? And the truth is, again, part of the Peterson moment was he got a lot of people had a whole bunch of stuff up here, and Peterson's like, clean your damn room. Do something, please. And often as a pastor, you just watch people who are stuck, and they're just going round and round and round and round. And it's like, I don't even care what you do right now. Just please try anything. And it'll probably not work, but okay, now you know one thing that doesn't work. We can try other things. But then there's some people that are always trying everything, and it's like, why don't you just stop trying things and sit for a moment and reflect on all of your trying? And again, it's back to that back and forth business.
Is that like conversational cycling that you're describing? Is that often sort of like people like seeking permission to remain stuck? I feel like a lot of the folks that I talk to, they can't do certain things unless it's been officially approved, unless the right laws are in place. All of a sudden, this is something that's acceptable to believe. In a lot of cases, people won't try something that's unconventional to get them out of a loop.
I think that's what I sense here is whatever we're doing in this space is the tools of deconstruction and modernity have no power. You have no power here. Tools of deconstruction. Because what are you deconstructing? What physical organization is going to be bankrupted? What building's going to be torn down?
It's lives are so, again, part of why my vocation is interesting is I watch lives, And I reflect on that because someone said, it might have been, it was James Woods in that video that I was mentioning that you probably watched too, Sam, with Michael Horton. James Wood made the comment that people have sort of an instinctive sense of the good. It's certainly not infallible, but that's, people are usually trying to reach towards some good or through some good or at some good, and they get terribly messed up with it. We all get that. But you watch people, and Augustine, of course, saw this pretty clearly, that it's about the order of the goods and getting certain orders right. And when I think, Jill, about the the spiritual discipline of prayer and these, part of what's happening with it. So the Metagelical, Dallas Willard was big in that, the Renovare movement in Protestantism of, here are a bunch of Baptists that suddenly realized, oh my goodness, the ancient church, they meditated, they prayed, they had the divine office, they had all of this stuff, they had monastics, and in some ways the Protestant Reformation pushed that to the side and said, hey, wait a minute, regular people get to be Christians too, not just monks. And we're going to try and have, John Calvin's Geneva, we're going to try and have a whole city be a monastery, and kind of a failed project. And Calvin sets all the pastors that followed him up for deep frustration. Yet there's something here about what the church is for, is to help people get unstuck, but not sort of in the modernist ways that psychology did with diagnoses and all of this cause and effect. Well, if you're having this stuckness, then apply this sort of CBT or Freudian psychoanalysis, and that will help. And again, those things work too, to a degree, but in the big frame, nothing works perfectly. And again, my bigger frame is that in the age of decay, we don't finally get what we're looking for here. And that in the third horizon, you look for that in the third horizon, but you have to lean towards that. And you do that as a civilization, and you do that as an individual, and you do that as a family, and you do that as a church. And you're working on all these levels at the same time.
One thing, I'm just curious if anyone has this phenomenological experience, because it seems like a huge breakthrough for me. And but like it feels to me like over the past 8 years of my religious conversion, I've been able to define myself, like the identity question, based on what I'm doing and not based on what I'm receiving, or the proportion of those two things has steadily reversed. Meaning like resentment, you could say like resentment is the difference between your expectation of receiving and what is being received. And if your expectation of receiving slowly diminishes down to virtually nil, and I'm not saying I'm there yet, but like that's something I trust immensely that I'm on the right path, you could say. Like if I notice that expectation of receiving and how much I care about that and towards my personal identity just drops. That's remarkable. Like that's not a phenomenological thing that I ever even considered, that like if you really want to be happy, like just, there's an ability to lower expectations without lowering your capabilities or lowering
Buddhism, Stoicism, both came up with that observation. I mean, the Four Noble Truths are right there, and a lot of Stoicism. And I picked that up from my mother. My mother has a large degree of Stoicism in her. I noticed that. It's just this Dutch Frisian Stoicism of low expectations. Well, you're generally quite pleased by what comes at you in the world if your expectations are low and your attachments aren't too grippy.
Yeah, but I guess, I mean, we're also supposed to be angry towards injustice too, though. I mean, you think of Christ, and I mean, yeah, part of Christ is his temptations in the wilderness, where he goes on the mountain and he's like, and he tells Satan, "No, this isn't my mission." But another part is, I mean, also taking the whip to the tax collectors in the church. And I mean, you talk about the competing things, and I mean, they're both there. And yeah, even though Stoicism definitely does have things to teach us for sure about what it means to be happy or to have a good life.
Well, and I, I'm finally not a Buddhist, and not that I really understand Buddhism that well, but the truth is that it is good to be attached, and it is good to want, and there are positive things to desire, and so I found the personal happiness is not the end. And that gets back to what Neil was saying before, in terms of one of the things that we learn in a life of service is that there is a happiness in the happiness of others that is in some ways more secure than my pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of saints seem like they were not the most happy people necessarily. I mean, you think of it with, like Mother Teresa, or Teresa of, oh gosh, I forget the name, Avila. Yeah, yep. So, yeah.
Well, and I get back go ahead.
I mean, my spiritual father, his first follower, he died at 40 because of some complication with his lungs. Even though he wanted to be a monk his whole life and do the whole prayer and so on, he just died at 40, and he wasn't happy about it as he came to that conclusion. But then, then he changed direction. He decided to accept it, and now he's actually canonized in the Orthodox Church, or at least locally. So, yeah. And his last words were "Grazie Dio per tutto," thanks to God for all. And yeah.
I think of Mabel, that Mabel story that I've read from The Life You've Always Wanted and John Ortberg. And I think about that often, because on one hand, again, as a pastor, you get to observe people in a rather privileged position. And I look at some people and they have a lot and they're miserable. And I know other people who have very little and they're not that miserable. And it's like, life in this world is a very strange thing that we're living. And it does take wisdom. It does take wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is like, I decided to actually use the Estuary protocol and turn it a bit on its head. Instead of talking about stuff, I would just have a party and that was it, not talk to it. And it's kind of strange because I didn't have a point in the whole thing, so the people just took over. But still, I was like the host and so on, and just encouraging them to do things. And it was kind of interesting how it's developed a little subculture where I live, where we just talk about, yeah, you remember 2 years ago when we did that thing, and so it's kind of strange because I never actually talked that much about Christianity, but just sometimes I prodded it a bit, and so even if and a good side of my friends are like atheists and so on, and they want to talk loudly more often than not are atheists, and it's kind of interesting because I'm just giving them a bit of a nudge in a certain direction. So and they still bark about it. They say no. Saint Paul was like this guy that just convinced people at the market as he was doing some stuff with his hands, working actually because he wasn't a preacher. He worked with his hands. It's kind of, yeah, I guess it's. So the evening started with that, and then it got sideways. We actually started to sing a few songs that, we have like some local band that does some music that it's kind of really special because I don't feel there is anywhere in the world this kind of music. It's kind of just singing about food and so on. So yeah, so it's a bit of a tangent, and I don't feel like I'm explaining it properly. So
I mean, it seems like an expression of the place where the words end. Like, rather than arguing them into something, it's, I have something worth celebrating. Come celebrate with me.
Yeah.
And does anybody else start things like that? Is anybody else throwing parties the way that you're throwing parties?
well, I mean, other people are doing kind of a similar thing, but it's kind of they're like 5 years older than me, so they're about 30, and so on. It's well, they don't have the same way of doing things. It's kind of more centered about this little association they have about playing games like Risk and so on. And instead, what they have at my home is just I just organize the food and a Polaroid to do dumps photos with, and the other thing that was kind of an attraction this year is we built a little altar to one friend of ours. We lit a candle for him because he was absent due to the fact that he was working with the. He's actually he has become a doctor, so now he has to work on New Year's Eve as a. Since he came to the last two New Year's Eve celebrations, we just put a picture on it with him with a candle. We did a few photos of we praying to him. It felt a bit blasphemous, to be quite honest, but it's kind of we're still like honoring a guy that is sacrificing his time for like the good health of people. So it's kind of ironic, but in what is the other word? When we are at the end of irony and we still value like proper behavior. What was it? It's kind of this beyond the meta-modern. Exactly. We did it. It was kind of a little meta-modern moment, but I didn't explain meta-modernism to people there. Just like have a go at it.
Who can even do that, honestly?
Yeah, I mean,
the word makes more sense, but the concept's way blurry than Metagelical.
Yeah, we kind of play actually with these things at the party. It's kind of, I mean, Nietzsche also talked about after the death of God, we can play with the values, and it's kind of, well, let's play with the values. And to be honest, God is still here. So.
And hey, if they ironically play with Christian values, who knows what's going to grow?
Yeah, exactly. And I felt that like I was little, always kind of felt that on the downside of culture. It's kind of, these atheists, they're always against us and they always have the better jokes. It's unbelievable. and nowadays I feel like
they used to. They're cringe now.
Yes,
that fedora killed
back.
I really like that. It's the I don't know. Yeah, I used to see Christianity as like, oh man, that's a much narrower set of how I can be creative and interesting and funny and provocative. And now I don't feel that way at all. Now I feel like that inside, oh, it's larger on the inside. It's way bigger.
Everything's bigger inside.
Yeah.
But the Kindle thing, Gil, you were talking about.
To our friends.
But what I like about this, one of the things that does is that it tends to like it draws attention to both, people's personal presence there and absence. And even though your friend was not there, like how amazing is that you weren't able to make it to a party and everyone still noticed, like explicitly notices their absence. That's part of the community right there.
All right, I have dropped the link. So if anybody wants to come in and participate in this, maybe in terms of this moment, maybe go around the circle to just give everybody one last word. That doesn't mean you have to leave by any means. Maybe nobody will come in, but thoughts on this conversation, Matt, takeaways.
I think it's so frustrating. There's so many different strands every single time. And one just random bit that Neil said a little bit ago is that deconstruction has no power here. But I kind of wonder if it's almost more like we're using the tools of deconstruction as actually modes of exorcism. Like we're going through their best arguments, their best texts, and turning them on their own heads. Like it's supposed to hollow us out, but it's actually freeing us.
That's good. I like that. Good. Sam, Michigan Sam, out there in the cold.
Yes, thank you for hosting today, Paul. It was nice seeing Neil again and meeting Matt, Jill, and Ian. That was all good. And in terms of big takeaways, I guess I'm going to have the idea. Well, Metagelical is one thing that's in my mind, but horizons and the idea of the three horizons is definitely something that'll be on my mind, I think, for a while.
All right, good. Ian, so thoughts you've had on today's conversation? Oh, you're muted.
One is that it's really confirmation for me to catch up in a way. I need to aggress more on my desires to connect and to bring people together on various different levels. And the second thought is there was a little bit about conversation, Paul, you were talking about it. And when you're witnessing somebody else, not in the sense of witnessing Jesus directly, but when you're just a witness to somebody else in whatever they're going through, I think sometimes we have an effect that isn't immediate. These are things that it's just so helpful for people to get to hear themselves or to view themselves from outside themselves in a way, and it's all helpful, I think. So less introversion for me.
Big thanks to Rick Walker, 50 free Randos memberships. So if you're watching on Twitter and you want to get in there, get in there. But no, I agree, and it's the thing that I so often think about is there's this, just like we talked about with respect to how many aspects in life, there's this narrowness and breadth. You need narrowness, you need constraint for there to be almost all of the good things we value, but we also want it available. And so it's back and forth between these two things. And I think about that with Christianity, how Jesus, it's something how Jesus did more to sort of make Christianity universal and inclusive than anyone else. And at the same time, he says these most exclusive things. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. It's like, whoa, wow. That is the most exclusive thing you could possibly imagine. And to be both, to say that and then to be seen as humble, and to say of a Roman, I've not found such faith in Israel as this Roman who has a Jewish slave. I mean, it's just, you read the Gospels and they just keep doing this. And I think part of the reason the Gospels have not been exhausted is that this thing is going on through them, and we read them, and it's like, just trying to get my mind around this. But life
Right.
is like that too, and I see that in life. So
It's process, like breathing. Like
I mean,
yeah.
it's the word of God. So how can you exhaust it?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I loved what Neil said about people. People are both just so tiring and inexhaustible. And you have to figure that out about people, and you have to learn to endure that about other people. Because nothing is more frustrating. I mean, most of when I deal with people, again, a lot of what you deal as a pastor is you hear people complain. Okay, because people complain because there's stuff to complain about, and they're suffering, and so they complain. And it's exhausting listening to complaints. But you have to do it to a degree. And also, you don't really get anywhere until you get to the other side of complaint. And it's tough. It's tough. All right, Jill, thoughts on today's conversation?
Oh, I really liked it. I felt were really present in this conversation. And I like that we talked a bit about meta-evangelicalism, and we can just turn the culture upside down because Jesus is not exhausted and is not being captured by an institution. So
I'll make one comment about this comment. It's funny because someone from my church might listen to this say, I'm never going to complain to the pastor again. And I don't want them to do that, because in a sense, if they stop complaining to me, they stop showing themselves to me. And if they don't show themselves to me, there's a reason when you go to the doctor's office for a physical, you take off all your clothes. And that's kind of what happens with pastoral care. Now, again, please, when you go to your pastor, please don't take off all your clothes. You'll probably endanger his career. But it's that kind of transparent. It's a metaphor, boys and girls. It's a metaphor. So, all right, Neil, takeaways from today's conversation.
I just want to thank the CRC for sponsoring our great victory over Penn State, Notre Dame. I've been indoctrinated into the sacred third order of foolish fighting Irish transparency through marriage to my wife. And no, in all seriousness, I want to thank the four of you, and also Paul for your good dialogos today. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I have dropped the link, and if anybody wants to come in, if anybody doesn't want to come in, then we're going to keep this up to the top of the hour. And then I'm going to play some branding. I play some. So Sunday afternoon, we're going to go after church. I probably won't have time to do a Freddie and Paul show, but we're going to drive up to the cemetery and with Dog Bark's family and bury him. And I'll say some words, and some of the family will get a chance to say a few words, and Freddie and Charles and Chemo will probably say a few words. And Dog Bark, I feel Chemo sort of randoed Dog Bark. And I don't know where that video is right now, but it was it was I had planned at some point to do this with Dog Bark. I didn't know if it would be best because tech wasn't his thing to have set up a camera at church and do it, but I hate it when they sneak out of here and we can't quite get the full but I'm super happy I got to know Dog Bark for as long as I did, and I got to share him with you all because he was a fun guy. He's a fun guy. So
I have a feeling that branding is gonna last a while. So
yeah. And Dennis, the guy he plays with on the on Jesus to Walk With Me, Dennis is gonna play at his graveside too. So I'm looking forward to meeting Dennis. So All right. I'm really surprised nobody's picked up on the link. I pinned it, but maybe, everybody's busy. So
I'm going to head out, but
all right, Neil.
Have a
Take
good day.
care.
Have a good one. It's a pleasure.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Sam. All right. Well, maybe we're done. Maybe we're done.
I'll throw one. I'm not sure how welcome this will be with you, Gilles, but a lot of your comments today really reminded me of Paul's video about the deep similarities between evangelical piety and Paul King's North admission that everyone should become mystics. It's like the more that you talk about like becoming more like Jesus, avoiding being lukewarm, I'm like, you sound like everybody I know in my humdrum strip mall church.
In your what?
In my humdrum strip mall church.
Oh, strip mall church. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Can I try to one up them in piety?
Oh, go right ahead. Oh, it's easy if you're Orthodox, absolutely.
Yeah. See, I believe as we were at the Uffizi, I did the one single picture, and it was of Jesus doing a speech, explaining to the disciples, "Pay your taxes," and I feel like if we are on YouTube, I feel like you're not giving Caesar what is Caesar's if you're not using YouTube Premium on some level, because otherwise YouTube is always incentivized to rob our attention as fast as they can, and if we don't pay it, then we should pay in another way, which is probably more destructive. So yeah, kind of I wanted to actually to say that at the middle of the conversation, right, about as the talk was about doing just simple prayers and so on, but it never came to it, and I felt like, yeah, now it's the good moment. Let's throw it out here from the internet. Pay YouTube Premium.
Yeah. Michael Sartori.
You said that I'm in every stream at the beginning, so then I thought
I'm glad you made it to this one. I don't want to have a stream without you.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, the whole like metagelical thing, I feel like that is the word that like I got through the whole process of writing my book, and I'm like, oh, that's the word. Like, so
I got
Go ahead.
I got the meta part. What it says? Gel mean anything or jellical?
Well, it's evangelical.
Yeah, right. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And Bas Van Os took me to task because he says, if you chop that up Greek-wise, you sort of mess it up. And yeah, I get that. And so Christian Baxter made the same point, but I know how language works and people compress things. So neo-evangelical got compressed to evangelical.
And then CW was sharing his version. He shared with you of ecumengelical.
Oh, that's worse. Oh. No, because part of the problem is that the ecumenical movement has left such a bad taste, unfairly in some ways, but such a bad taste in so many people's mouths because it sort of devolved into the United Nations.
Is metagelical like ecumenism at the lay level? So we're like, we don't care what our pastors and our fathers are doing. We're going to talk to one another.
Yeah, and evangelicalism was too for Protestants.
Well, we have no authority.
Yeah. And but what happened, so this I put the book away. I shouldn't have. I was reading this book from the late 80s by one of the most prominent sociologists of religion, and the book is about the changes in American religion from the 1940s to the 1980s, and had everything to do with rejection of the leadership, rejection of the hierarchy. Right now, in many places in the Central Valley, like Ripon, California, which is sort of the central of the Christian Reformed Church in Central California, they have an organization called Love Ripon. There's Love Ripon, there's Love Modesto, and these are organizations where all of the different churches are food for the poor, clothing for the poor, trunk or treat events, just wealth. We're gonna homeless, sheltering the homeless. It's sort of a broad diaconal thing, but a lot of it is just frustration with getting moved. The darn pastors and church hierarchies, they're in the way of us doing something really practical and helpful. They've got all these little confessional walls between them. Forget that. Just help the poor. And there's something really beautiful about that. And Americans get that. So, and that's it. Ecumenism was all thinky talky, and so, my talk with Nathan Jacobs, hey, fair enough about scholasticism, but that's a certain portion of your people that have all these mega minds and have to talk about this, and a lot of them are like, when your neighbor is hungry, feed them. When they're sick, help them. When they have a hole in their roof, fix it, and that's important too.
There's something about being at the head of the hierarchy that it has to be a two-way street. Right. So from the bottom up, and you're just there. I mean, that's been my experience when I've managed events. Is if I don't try to overmanage, people will come to me and say, well, how about this? And I'm doing that. And I'm like, okay, go for it.
Yep. I have a rule in my church. He or she who does decides. Well, what do I mean by that? And that's a 90% rule. Every now and then it'll be like, no, you can't do that. So, I told a story where I'm driving. I gave a guy a ride to a doctor's appointment, and I'm driving back, and I'm coming in, and I see a very well-meaning guy setting up this big blue tarp over a sick homeless person that's been on my steps. And you feel like you feel like a horrible person saying, I can't let you put up a tent right here. And so the guy's like, what kind of a pastor are you? Aren't you supposed to be, don't you read about Lazarus and the rich man? And it's like, but you have to understand, I've got to manage all these levels of this situation. And last week, this woman pulls up into my parking lot, and she's like, this was her tent. She saw me outside. She's like, can't you do something about the homeless? You're making our struggling neighborhood look bad. And it's like, and if you're at the top of the hierarchy, that's what you got to manage. And so part of managing it is when people say, you stupid pastors, you're getting in the way. It's like, have at it. Start Love Sacramento. And a good friend of mine goes around the city of Sacramento raising money to give homeless people tents. And part of me is like, oh. But another part of me knows I'm not going to stand in the way. So it's crazy. So that's why it's evangelical. And I completely agree with Matt, who's now joined the Witness Protection Program, to that this is evangelicalism is both dying and colonizing at the same time. So John Van Donk, father of the Estuary.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I just wanted to come and really congratulate Gil with his initiative to gather people for friendly parties, just a way to be together without an agenda. I think that sometimes we make it too complicated. And I love the simplicity of just being together and serve a meal. I'd like to maybe say something about that in my own Estuary group. We start with the regular protocol, and we do have the conversations, but we've been going for a few years now, and these people have all become friends. And so there's all kinds of spin-off happening, people having relationships, people going for coffee together. And we have one guy who's invited the whole group 2 years in a row now for a Christmas dinner. and 20 people show up, and we gather around the table, and some people will say that this is the first time in their life that they've been around a large family table to have a meal together with other people. And that is a sacred moment. That is a sacramental moment. And I wonder if Jill isn't actually onto something more profoundly sacramental than he is even willing to acknowledge himself.
Well,
All right.
to be quite honest, it's also kind of a regional thing because when there's like this map on the Discord server where we see all the pins of people all around the world, and the one I noticed is that in this little corner there are a few people from Italy, and my suspicion is kind of when I talk with them, you can't really talk that much about idea. It's kind of a more complicated business than just that, but talking in a group is kind of seen a bit, let's say, with more suspicion as a Protestant culture would. So it's kind of the region I live in is Catholic, so at least in its form of behavior, let's say. And my suspicion is, yeah, it has something to do with the sacraments. In Protestantism, you talk and you hear the sermon of the pastor. In Catholicism, it just, you have your rights, the priest says something sometimes, and but mostly it's the whole ritual. And my suspicion it's something to do with that. And yeah, I don't think we shall see about, for me, it works. So, yeah.
All right. Jer, how can I say your name?
Jer, or Jeremy.
Jer.
Yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to say that I like the format. I think it's very good. And I also applaud what Jill had done. And I also think that, Ian, that there's a story to hear from you as well in the long run, and to find an unpacking about that. I was kind of curious about the format, kind of making me think, Paul, like, do you kind of see this format as seminary training without the full implication of seminary training? Like, imagine, like, like if there were degrees or steps of seminary training, that this is the preparatory phase for the preparatory phase, or the basis of which, right? Because it kind of feels like this type of interaction is sending out agents into the world, right? It's the grounding of the, right? So what have we got? 3 people. I'm not sure if Matt is a kind of a frequent participator or not, but you've got multiple people who were in the lurk and yet are now finding their voice. That's agency, right? And I know there is no agency, as the saying goes, right? But here we're indulging. So do you see that aspect of it? Like, I mean, the estuary is kind of maybe the same thing. And I know the word seminary might be loaded, but try to interpret that in a way that's not going to be bogged down by maybe using the wrong word.
Yeah, I'll be a good Protestant and quote Rick Warren and say every member a minister. And what I mean by that is, what do I want? I mean, people have been asking me ever since I started this crazy YouTube thing, what do I want? And I don't fully know what I want either. But a part of what I do know that I want is that I want people to love each other better. I mean, it goes all the way back to Jesus, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And in a secular age, people are skeptical about the G word, but well, why don't we begin by loving each other better? And a huge place, I got to give tons of credit to John Van Donk here, because Van Donk, has been a purist on a lot of this stuff. And even though Estuary is sort of connected with talking, by virtue of the fact that, every Estuary meeting, you'll do way more listening than talking. And the thing about an Estuary meeting, the way it's constructed as, let's say, opposed to a classroom in a seminary, is if you're not listening during an Estuary meeting, everybody's going to notice it, and you're going to lose status in that group. Because if you want your status to rise with people, listen to them. I mean, it sounds like such a small thing, but it isn't small, and it's costly, and it's hard. And so if there's anything that I accomplish on YouTube or in Estuary or anything like this, that people will say, I'm a better listener. I care for people more. I love them better. I'm good. I'm happy. So if that's like seminary, all right, I'll take it.
It's personalized listening, because what made me think about this was you talked to a guy, and I don't want to overcook it because it's 5 past already. But there was you guy talked to a guy. Oh, you showed the hierarchy video where this guy looked at the various, right? And he had about 70,000 followers, And I was thinking to myself, but are his followers just listening to all his videos and consuming them, passively, although attentively, but still very passive? Whereas what is happening here is this kind of active listening, in that, or relational or personalized listening, which I think is very indifferent. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for entertaining my question.
Oh, thanks.
I think an apt analogy might be like the hallways outside of a seminary classroom where the real action happens, or the coffee shop we all go to afterwards. I think that's closer to what this is. I mean, we're all reacting to like different like lectures, videos, as if they were a class, and processing them together, playing with them.
And YouTube, and what you notice about YouTube, this is another fascination of mine. And I think Matt is right, because YouTube is most channels are sort of like the seminary classroom. It's a lecture. Here, I'm selling this to you. I'm trying to colonize you. I'm trying to force feed you this thing. And in many ways, the real action at seminary, even Donk's been to seminary, Matt's been to seminary, the real action at seminary happens between the people. And so, I push out a lot of content on my channel, I know, but I do it selfishly. It's because I got to get some stuff off my chest. But what I really love is, again, the fact that all these other channels have sprung up. All these estuary groups have sprung up. And there are friendships, because ideas are powerful. Don't get me wrong. And spirits are real. But friendships, boy, that's one of Tolkien's main points, It was the friendship between Sam and Frodo that saves the world. So, no, I think you're onto something. And I often watch other channels, and I think, all right, but the truth is, am I happier with my YouTube channel with 30,000 subs instead of 15,000 subs, or 10,000 subs, or 5,000 subs, or 100 subs? Not really.
Well, developmentally, where was I? Was I in a better place developmentally? 2 years of watching, or 4 years or 5 years of watching your content, versus being in a place where I would be willing to get out of the lurk and talk and communicate with other people, right? So maybe that's the difference, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Sometimes some people need to lurk for a while. It's like there's some people that need to just sit in the back of the church for a couple of years. Just pop in, run out, and they get acclimated, they warm up.
Yeah.
But also, it's hard to find an on-ramp here. And that's on purpose, I guess, but it's annoying.
It's hard to find what?
It's hard to find an on-ramp here.
Yeah, and that's
like I've been trying to end my lurkerdom for a while. And I get that it's on purpose.
But not an estuary.
I go to Estuary.
I said that there's no on-ramp in Estuary.
No, that's right. But you're right, and it's gotten harder. And that's the problem with hierarchies. Is once the bigger, I mean, some people are like, your channel should have 1 million subscribers. Really? I get it. I can use more money and more access to higher status people. That would be fun. Private jet, that'd be great too. Is that good for my soul? So I'm not going to wish for some of these other things. And I already find it deeply frustrating how steep the on-ramp is. But again, You know, you look at the Orthodox. The whole selling point of Orthodoxy right now is we're not letting anybody in. It's like, fair enough. The rigor. People want rigor. And so, you know, I look at Chad. Chad got into this because he's like, I want to play too. Chad has put in serious time, money, effort, and hey, it's paid off. And so that reality is there too. That, hey, you want to really play hard in the TLC? Hey, Michael Sartori, he wrote an 800-page book. You know, Mark D. Parker has his channel, has his thumbnail. So it's like this with the on-ramp question, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, there needs to be more mediating structure, but to be honest, you can, yeah, for me, I kind of have my critiques of this little corner, but I find, yeah, just implementing it in my daily life, it's kind of how I decide to do the Estuary is my kind of preview, and yeah, what comes out to is also, yeah, the glory of whatever comes. And
yeah,
the on-ramp is our responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and I love, there's a John McLean. Is it John? No, Steve, or I don't remember. The guy who sang American Pie. My favorite song is not American Pie. It's the more you pay, the more it's worth. And that's the same in church. I mean, you know, the people who really get something out of church, it's the people that really give themselves. The same in a marriage relationship, same with a child. The more you pay, the more it's worth. And it's just a truism. So
yeah, I thought I was just thinking, somebody had said earlier in the conversation about like how you know, there's the people that are always waiting for permission, like from the authorities before they'll do the thing, and you know, so I'm thinking about like what this corner is, and that there's no authority giving, you know, whatever, you do it yourself. But even when I listened to the Mel Gibson talking to Joe Rogan, the last 20 minutes of the thing is when he starts talking about like his film career and from the Passion onward, and basically it was like he just get to this thing of like, Hollywood's not gonna help me make this movie, I just got to do it myself. And then, you know, that's the thing that's gone on there. And if you think about like a metagenic, whatever, like think about like Braveheart, not just the Passion, but Braveheart and Apocalypto. And I actually went to a mega church where we only visited the one time, but the sermon was like pre-recorded and spliced with scenes from Hacksaw Ridge, and like that was the sermon illustration. It wasn't crunchy enough for us, but you know, so it's like Mel Gibson's out there doing this stuff, and I think that's the thing. Like our hierarchies always end up with like somebody huge at the top and everybody else at the bottom, and there's all this space in the middle that is up for grabs if you can figure out a way to go for it.
And that's basically what I did. I saw what was happening with Peterson, and it's like, well, I can talk about his stuff. I wondered at first, is YouTube going to take it down? Is Peterson, am I going to get content strikes? Is this going to work? Is anybody going to listen? Does it matter? But then it's like, and still now, there are videos that I make, it's like, nobody's going to want to watch this video. And sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. But it's like, I want to make this video. Screw you, YouTube. I'm going to make my video, put it up, and just go ahead. There's a lot of that in this corner. And I think it's cool. Mark D. Parker or John Van Donk, did you have something specific you wanted to bring, or just
No, we're good. Thank you.
I was thinking, like, for a moment, you talked about the more you invest in it, the more it will give you back. It's kind of, yeah, that's really, I was thinking, like, how does that work in government? It's kind of, it's, let's say there's a central figure, what is it? If there's the king, you give yourself up to the king, you get more back. It's kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I was thinking about this question of authority because it's what's preoccupied me for a
Well,
while.
there's a lot of truth to that. I see that, and so I am, I'm in Sacramento. It's a very political town. And I see people who give themselves to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, the king, and often the question is the person worthy of the sacrifice? And again, and once a hierarchy gets too big, it's sort of like Ian noted. It's so on one hand, when I see the guy putting up this blue tarp over the homeless guy, part of me is like, oh, you're such a good guy. And another part of me is like, oh, I got to break your heart and I don't want to do this, but I've got all of these responsibilities and I've got to manage them all, and I'm going to get it wrong. So and that's where it's nice to, and again, the most gratifying thing about my experience on YouTube is I love it when someone starts a little channel. I mean, how many subs you got now, Mark? With the House of Woo, I think we just heard from some. I don't know what's going on with your tech situation, Mark, but
it feels like there's some whale trying to talk to us. Sorry, it's really strange.
It's really strange. We've never seen this. Go out and come back in again, Mark. I don't know what's going on with your link. But yeah, Mark is out there and he doesn't have a lot of subs and he's going after it, and he has the House of Woo and he's having great conversations and he ruffles people's feathers, and and it's like, that's some of that Van Donk energy. I mean, that is such Van Donk energy. Because I remember talking to John Van Donk once, and John's like, you know what I'm going to do? Ornamental sheep. It's like, because they got these in the Netherlands. And I was in the Netherlands, I saw them. It's like, oh, those are Van Donk sheep. And he didn't manage to pull it off because the United States is, nervous about invasive species and all kinds of things. But John Van Donk doesn't sit around and ask for permission. John Van Donk is like, I'm going to do this thing. And he does it. And, I love that spirit. And there's a lot of that just look at Chad, look at Grizz, look at Mark, look at all these people. It's, I love it.
Geographically, Mark is part of my estuary.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, try your voice again. Oh, you're muted.
Just one of those days.
You'll have to go back and watch it because it was hilarious. I don't know what happened, but it was funny.
Well, I just pushed a big update on my Mac and didn't do a second reboot, and I think that might have been the problem.
Okay.
But now I'm on my phone. So I've lost track of what it was. To answer your question, I'm up to 130, so I'm still it's been a slow crawl. Maybe reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead will give us a big boost with the New Agers. So we'll get a whole bunch of New Agers into the corner, but we'll see.
Do the Tao. Do the Tao Te Ching. That's fun.
Yeah, that's a good one too. But I already have my plan, so it's going to be a Tibetan book. It's going to be a delve into Tibetan Buddhism. Anyway, regarding you said something about on-ramping is difficult, and it's an idea that's been rambling around. And it just crystallized in the moment you spoke, Paul, was maybe this is just the ramp, not the stream, or not the actual road. You're a ramp for people into a wide variety of sacred traditions in which they need to find themselves coming out of secularism and deconstruction and confusion, so that people come through the corner and into Catholicism, or into a new form of Catholicism, or into Orthodoxy, or into a new more vibrant evangelicalism, whatever. But this is not it's impossible to on-ramp this. I mean, it makes no sense. I've tried to explain it to people, and it can't be explained. I think the best recommendation I heard someone say was, tell them to watch Paul Vanderklay's latest video and go from there.
Boy.
Well, I think like deconstructing our modern presuppositions requires a tremendous escape velocity. So the on-ramp does need to be steep, because getting out to where the air is clear is hard. But
The problem is we're like a multi-level marketing scheme, but nobody's friends or family are interested at all. So we just have to rely on random weirdos.
But it is
the next crypto scam right here.
Go ahead, Ian.
It is up to us. There are ways of on-ramping people that I'm thinking of. Just I would send out a video, some sort of video that I know that they could relate to. It could be 2 steps removed from the corner, but it's like a start. And then the following year, they've already progressed to this point. So it's a little bit, somebody said, you need to sit in the back of the church for a while. There is a rate at which immigration into the corner should proceed. You don't want to be flooded and suddenly be in the New York Times,
Yeah, I actually fear that. I do. I am worried that at some point, well, I shouldn't worry about that, because let's say someone in the New York Times wrote a thing on this, or maybe Fox News, or I think it's still, people would look at it like, I look at people who've, you go on Peterson, and that's, at some point it's probably going to happen that Jordan and I are going to have a conversation online, more than the one that we already had. And, he's got his 8 million subscriber channel, yada, yada, yada. And then we'll get like this bump of 1,000 or 2 new subs. But I don't know that it's going to make a difference. Of the 1,000 or 2 new subs, there'll only be 4 or 5 who really start to play. There'll be a few more who crop into live streams. But I think the essence of this is, yeah, you can watch and you can enjoy and you can do all of that, but it goes to a different level. And I think, Mark, recently, you're one of the more recents who said, and Ian too, he said, okay, I'm gonna take a next level up. I'm gonna click that darn link. And then, Mark was like, I'm gonna start making YouTube videos, and I'm gonna get a StreamYard link, and and what I love about this again is when I first saw House of Woo and I saw Ron and Mark on it, I thought, oh, that's perfect. And I watch Mark's channel. I watch Mark and Chad and Grizz probably more than I watch anything else on YouTube. And even if I don't comment on everything, because, and Mark's conversation with a guy who's kind of at the ground floor of Vineyard, I mean, that's almost creeped into a few of my videos already, because that was a really good conversation. And I learned a lot, and I had a lot of ideas. And so, and again, Chad, how much of my branding is coming from Chad now? So I think I think the real core of this is playing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, like about the on-ramping thing is kind of just showing a bit of interest in people. And what we do have in our little group here is kind of a few guys that we have this. Does anybody of you know Warhammer?
The game?
It's a board game, and we have pretty much invented let's say a campaign where the different board game interact with each other. So we write a story about it, and we have like a little WhatsApp group where we write up the stories. So and I try to critique my friends because I've done some writing in the past, so I'm a bit better at it than they are. So I try to help them a bit with their creative writing, let's say. So that already is kind of a bit of on-ramping, but I do notice like you really need real time to actually help these people, just to give genuine feedback instead of just too generic kind of, oh yeah, it's good, oh no, it's bad. Yeah.
I think a lot of this too. So often, evenings, I'm not around evenings. I'm doing stuff with my wife, but maybe my wife's got a meeting or something. So then I'm by myself late at night, and then someone's streaming. And that's the virtually not alone aspect of this too, where it's like, oh, look, my friends in real life, my kids are busy with things, or they don't live in town, and my friends are all in bed, and Mark D. Parker's streaming House of Woo. I just want to jump on, and I want to, I want to just be on a live stream with them, and it's basic community and friendship, and it's a powerful thing.
Well, and it's a place where you can breathe in and out ideas that you can't really do in your local church community without freaking out people. Your friends will understand you. The people who are close to you might say, that's just Mark being Mark, or Paul being Paul, and they'll understand. But if the casual fellow parishioner or what have you may lose their mind if they hear some of the things we talk about. I mean, it's just, it can be disruptive where it's not disruptive here, or even if it is disruptive, it's part of the culture of the corner.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
To that point, Mark, I still think it's worth our efforts to try and make Estuary or even TLC more truly church adjacent, and to recruit and persuade some people in church leadership that to have an estuary on the campus is not a bad way to use the resources, because it does build a bridge from the local church to the community. And my own local estuary has usually about 2 or 3 people from the congregation who were introduced to the estuary strictly by the branding that's being done on the church website, and they make a marvelous, wonderful contribution to the conversations that are happening with people that come through meetup.com. And so what I'm saying here is that I think we need to create a different mindset about the church. We can bitch about the church as a closed thing, or we can sort of begin to appreciate what it can actually do, even for the purposes of TLC or Estuary, that it becomes a resource. And you just have to pick the right church. You have to pick the right church leadership. You have to make a pitch every once in a while. And I'm certainly going to apply more of my energy to doing that, because the whole notion of Estuary being church adjacent is an underdeveloped thought.
Well, and
I'm kind of two minds about that. I feel like it's just the right sort of like tenuous connection. I think it's far enough away that you're actually able to like play. I feel like if it gets too formally attached, then the ethos of playing with ideas becomes a little bit harder to do. And frankly, especially if it's something that's run by a pastor of a church, how many pastors can get away with playing in public with ideas, honestly?
Well, that would be a first part of the conversation. Don't expect the pastor to do it. Find the right person in the church who can manage that and who can be an estuary leader. I think that most pastors, unlike Paul, are not really in the position. That's the managing of the different levels that Paul was talking about earlier. You know, if you have to manage your congregation and your elders and your Bible study leaders and all the other people involved in the ministry of the church, you can't also easily be the estuary leader because it requires a different level of openness. But you can find people like that in some churches. I'm not going to say in every church, but in some churches you can find people like that, and we only need one in every town. We only need one in every town.
Yeah, I think treating it like, say, like the Boy Scouts or AA rents out your basement, I think that's the right level of church attachment for Estuary. It's a thing that we host, but
fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
I don't know,
enough.
my opinion.
No, I agree. Rick, what say you, Rick? Thanks for joining the stream. Rick's another guy who's been. We got more guys with big gray beards. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Oh, great. Last time I've got an iPad, and last time I tried to get on with Luke, it just didn't work. And I think you made a comment, Paul, but I'm like Ian there. I'm an old hippie from the 60s and 70s, and I've been around the block all over the place. I like to practice Zen meditation, which I learned in Maui. I also in Maui danced with the Sufis and did Dance of Universal Peace. But I am a Christian, and I've been a Christian since I was about 22, actually 20, when I was getting shot at in Vietnam and thought I wasn't going to make it. I turned to a God I didn't even know and said, please help me, get me out of here. And if you do, I'll be good the rest of my life and I'll always be grateful. And yeah, so I'm going to come on Mark's channel at some time and do a rando. But I think this is like an extra church. I go to United Church of Christ nearby, which is open and affirming. We welcome everybody. We have a lot of, well, not a lot, but we have 3 or 4 gay couples. Everyone's welcome to the Eucharist table. And my pastor is even more liberal than I am, which is like, wow, how did that happen? And so I'm a progressive Christian. I'm metagelical, metamodern. And I just want to play, you know, I've been lurking for about 3 or 4 years. And I just think I'm big on evolution of consciousness, evolution of Christianity, evolution of the planet. And I think we're in the middle of a great change, just like I experienced in the late 60s and 70s, a renaissance of spirituality and science and religion coming together. So I just want to say hi. I want to play in this sandbox, and I love you guys.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for coming on and telling a little bit of your story. Appreciate it. And looking
Thank
forward
you.
to your randos on the on the Mark D. Parker channel.
Yeah, I'll send you that email this weekend, Rick, and we'll set something up.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark.
Hey, I'd be curious to hear that. Just because, is anybody happy with the evolutions of the 60s at this point?
The revolutions?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
there's actually, I think there's a great deal of nostalgia looking backward to it positively, just as much as there's a lot of negative reaction against it. It goes both ways. You'd have to, depends on which population you're surveying.
Fair. Yeah, curious to hear it. Look forward to it.
Just a word to Cosmic Muffet. If that is in fact you, part of the reason I don't let people on the live stream until I see a face is because of, oh, there he is. Okay, I'll let you on now. Because I know him, and but sometimes all you gotta do is put a regular person down there and then come in, and yeah, Chad knows all about that. What do you have to say, my friend?
Oh, well, I didn't want to add to the beard disparity anymore.
I feel left out.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you, Vendonk?
You look so cold, John.
Part of what I'm
Oh yeah.
Part of what I'm on the track of right this morning is I had a discussion with a Gnostic friend about raising kids and kind of like the formative points where you have to make decisions about what's going to help this person avoid hardship and gain the skills they need to be a part of a community, and how you draw lines with them when they have bad behavior, and how patient you are with them. And it kind of all, we ended up talking about like the layers of hell in Dante and sort of treacheries at the bottom. And I was thinking about how the essence of treachery is to sort of beg God for intercession and then cast it away as soon as it comes and revert to whatever it is you were doing before and kind of throw off the help you get. But at the top is lust. And it strikes me that this conversation is about the intermingling of things. New ideas come from like the concept of the evolutionary lens, you know, fundamentally you're sharing, you're performing a physical communication and sharing an ongoing burden, and the complete unpredictability of that situation has hardships built in that can't be avoided, and also is sense like a narrow road to walk in order to properly respect the other, because there have been all kinds of configurations, the fact of different types of people connecting with each other in different ways. Like I don't necessarily just view that it's all about like the physical part where the man gives to the woman and then she generates the child. It's also that women mentally give to men and generate the personality, because your mother, like going back throughout history, always the mother has been the most powerful, pivotal creator of the psyche of her child. And that can also mean like complete abandonment or whatever. And so I see that that's something that also happens between men and women, where it's not a simple matter of, you know, one is the giver and one is the receiver. We give and receive in different ways that are complementary. And so the discussion of all this estuary to me has sort of got this sexual nature to it, where people want to believe that just one simple universal strategy is going to work all the time. And unfortunately, I don't think that really is what we see in the world, in the creation. What we see in the creation is that there's nothing predictable about the size and shape of an organism that's viable. And there's nothing predictable about the boundaries around that organism either, in terms of what kind of mixing can occur. So like I take the spirit of trying to put estuary in a church as being like, that can be a great way to invigorate the church, or it could be a good way to generate estuaries, or perhaps both. But at least for me, when I heard the metagelical phrase, what it reminded me of was the sense in which once you have a large group of people competing in any sense, you develop a meta strategy which predominates. And as soon as it predominates, new strategies become viable simply because of the expectations of the dominance. And so the lesson for me in all this is that no matter what pet thing you're into, it's going to lead a life separate from you, and it may die in front of you, and you may need to move on to something else. And that to me is the teaching of Christ in this case, is that you stand on dust and you don't know when the hierarchy you've built your life on will be removed by God, and you will be required to cast out all your demons that used to be your angels and move on to your next thing. Anyway, I hope that was useful for someone. Oh, Grim Grizz is making a handbook for choosing roles in the community. And if anyone's got interesting ideas about that, I recommend you get in touch with them.
Oh, what a great project. All right. Great to see you, man. He was in my little breakout estuary group up at Northwest Estuary in Olympia, Washington. And again, you know, so it's once you spend 8 hours doing estuary with someone, and he and his wife were both in the group. And so it was just really cool just getting to know all the people in my own little group. And again, in terms of on-ramp, the people who, if you're in an estuary group and you really participate and you really open up and you really share, you know, there's not saying, you know, it's a formula, but not sharing is probably more of a formula than sharing in terms of outcomes. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to land the plane here. And
I just want to say that Matt is actually Radagast. from Lord of the Rings.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
That big brown beard. It's beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Yeah. You got any final things for us, Mr. John Van Donk? Just start your estuary. Have it in. Rick, thanks for coming on. Thanks for telling a little bit of your story.
I just wanted to say, Paul, how much I appreciate your attitude, that it's really all about relationships and love. And that's what I'm interested in. I think this is a practice for me. Can I be in this group of a variety of people and learn how to accept them and love them, without being critical, state what I love and believe, and then not be critical. So it's a practice. And I think you model that so well. And I that's really helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. And I'm so glad you came out of the lurk and have shown your face here, and same with you, Ian, and same with you, Matt. And hopefully we'll keep having a distributed system where there are lots of little channels where you can get a rando very easily with Mark or Chad or someone, and there'll be lots of estuaries where you can just walk in the door and do that for a while. Go ahead, John. You raised your finger.
Mark Lefebvre would be most welcome in my local estuary.
Absolutely. Mark's a delightful person. And it's helpful to remember, even with, and we've seen this plenty, someone like T. Grog, in person or even on screen, much more of a delightful person. And I'm much more of a delightful person on the screen in the comments. I'm a troll in the text. And so that's, again, why it's important. If you just stay in the text and are a troll in the text, after a while, you're going to weigh on people. But if you can come up onto a screen, get a chance for people to know you, they still might not agree with you. You still might annoy them and all that, but they'll tolerate you because they know there's more to you than just whatever spirit is running through your fingers and making its way onto the screen and all the little letters and words. So,
and local is better.
Local is definitely better. Local is definitely better. All right. So I'm gonna let's play a little branding. Let's break the fourth wall branding. I think I've got that one here. Here we go. So thank you everyone for watching, and a special thanks to everyone who came on the stream, and especially the 5 who came on initially. And until next week.
Approaches are that's where the alignment is between Graham and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Graham?
A terrible spell. And part of that spell, the humans have a campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So, the television engages that. And, that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So, those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like they're audience. And, if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's what the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall behind which you are audience and not a human. So.
Okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus, @GrimGrizz, hashtag break the fourth wall.
So you do break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
break the fourth wall a little bit.
You really helped me break the fourth wall. It's just people.
Good poetry is definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can. Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
Previously on Game of Trolls.
You're not empathizing with me.
da 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 da.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
You walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
I want Jesus.
Want Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord. And hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah. Jesus journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing? Walk
with me.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my city I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king. And David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.